Hello, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, walking the spiritual walk. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein. Thank you all for joining me again this evening as we do today's daily reading from James Allen's Daily Meditations. This, of course, will be fresh to you and fresh to me, meaning that this will be my first time hearing it or reading it right here on this podcast with y'all. So you get my genuine response, reactions, observations, and what I relate to about the reading. And I got to tell you, the last 2 days of November have been fantastic. I feel like it was a slow start for me. It was cool stuff, but not as invigorating as October was. Maybe I was just coming off a really big spiritual um, trip with October. I loved October's set of readings there, that's for sure. So I really enjoyed it. And the last 2 days, yeah, November, that's what I was saying, excuse me, have been very good too. They've really resonated with me. And I'm looking forward here to seeing what November 12th brings us. And this, everything that happens is just. I love that. That was what I opened with yesterday. I was trying to remember the opening line. All right, so here we go. Let's go ahead and do today. So this is November 12th reading of James Allen's Daily Meditations. The man whose thoughts, words, and acts are sincere is surrounded by sincere friends. The insincere man is surrounded by insincere friends. Every fact and process in nature contains a moral lesson for the wise man. There is no law in the world which is not to be found operating with the same mathematical certainty in the mind of man and in human life. All the parables of Jesus are illustrative of the truth and are drawn from the simple facts of nature. There is a process of seed sowing in the mind and life, a spiritual sowing, which leads to a harvest according to the kind of seed sown. Thoughts, words, acts are seeds that produce after their kind. The man who thinks hateful thoughts brings hatred upon himself. The man who thinks loving thoughts is loved. When you know yourself, you will perceive that every event in your life is weighed in the faultless balance of equity. I like this. It's speaking to some of the eternal truths, spiritual laws, right? These things that underpin everything and are reflected in our daily living and in nature. Yeah, I was thinking about how it reminded me of, I believe it's the American Scholars essay from Emerson, how he talks about, I think it's wisdom. Forgive me if I'm butchering a reference here, guys, but I'm pretty sure it's the American Scholar by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He talks about the three types of learning to achieve wisdom, and that's by your associations, which he talks about here, lessons of old, and reading texts from old, like the Bible that was referenced here too, and then studying nature. That was the kind of the overall premise here. So very interesting. I like this. I like being reminded of the basics, or maybe that, I don't know if that might be called the basics, but more so the general theme or the general understanding of spirituality. This line it opened with is very indicative of James Allen's first or most popular book he wrote, which is As a Man Thinketh, right? and the follow-up also, which is Out from the Heart. So those things are the two books that when you read them, it's a understanding and a guidebook for actually changing your life from the outside in by changing your stopping behaviors to see your thinking, then changing your thinking to see your intentions, and then changing your intentions and your spirit, where you're functioning from. And when you can get that, when you trace your actions and your thinking all the way back to your beliefs, and before that, even where you're functioning from, that place of love or that place of fear, and you become a servant of love and service, then those changes in behavior and thinking will solidify. So what this first line is: the man whose thoughts, words, and acts are sincere is surrounded by sincere friends. The insincere man is surrounded by insincere friends. You are what you attract, right? So if you're surrounded by insincere people, you're insincere. Or if you know you're insincere all the time, just putting on a good front and a good face, just trying to please other people or be a version of yourself that other people would like, though it's not even close to who you actually are, right? You're being insincere with your approaches, and you're going to be surrounded by insincere friends. But if you're honest and authentic and truthful, genuine person that has integrity, you'll be surrounded by the same. So, as a man thinketh in his heart, is it as a man thinketh in his mind? So, hold on. Sorry, guys. I think I have it. Got the book right here. Yeah. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Sorry, I just had to whip out a copy of As a Man Thinketh real quick, kind of go through it. But As a Man Thinketh is the first book I ever. Sorry, I'm putting it back real quick. Is the first book I ever read by James Allen, and this was the premise, right? As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So you are what you think about, and you are what your heart holds. It's a pretty basic concept now to me, but to many it's a revelation. To many it was to me, right? Because I thought I had this block of disingenuous behavior and dishonesty between me and the world. So I thought I was one way and the world behaved in another way, and I had to force myself to, like a mismatched puzzle piece, to get into the world. But the reality of it is that was just my skewed thinking and my wrong thinking. So that opening line's fantastic. I love that. Brings me back to the beginnings of my sobriety. So here we go. Beginning of the main body of this. Every fact and process in nature contains a moral lesson for the wise man. I believe that to be true. Everything that happens in nature has a spiritual underpinning and background if we allow ourselves to look through it and to find it. We are honest with ourselves and with our observations that are in front of us. It's actually not so difficult to do at the end of the day anyway. It's pretty simple in practice. You just have to be willing to do it. Nature holds many, many moral lessons for us if we would just watch. So, there is no law in the world which is not to be found operating with the same mathematical certainty in the mind of man and in human life. Let me say that again. There is no law in the world which is not to be found operating with the same mathematical certainty in the mind of man and in human life. Oh, the study of nature having moral lessons for the wise man. Oh, actually, excuse me, that wasn't connecting that. This is a extenuation. Extend. It's a more of an explanation. Maybe is a better way to say that. An explanation of what he was saying. With every fact and process in nature contains a moral lesson for the wise man. There is no law in the world which is not to be found operating with the same mathematical certainty in the mind of man as in the human life. So everything that happens in this material world, there's a parallel to be drawn with the way we think and feel in spiritual law, really, at the end of the day. That's why it's so applicable. That's why studying nature, we begin to understand our spiritual selves that much more. All the parables of Jesus are illustrative of this truth, and they are drawn from the simple facts of nature, right? Like that process of storytelling, that process of passing spiritual truths and wisdom through the art of a story, through the presentation of that story. That's why the oral histories that were passed down for years were so important because they were wisdoms and morals and principles all wrapped up in a seemingly innocent, just little tale of glory or sadness. But it was so crucial. And the parables of Jesus that he's talking about here, the Bible and the things that are contained therein are different interpretations or different presentations of the same truths that nature brings us as well, is what he's talking about here, right? So the things that Emerson also talked about, so in the beginning was our associations, then we talked about nature, studying nature. Now we're talking about studying truths of old that have been passed down to us in some form of communication. Now, this seed sowing I really enjoy. There is a process of seed sowing in the mind and life. A seed sowing which leads to a harvest according to the kinds of seed sown. And was important for me to understand is everyone always told me to harvest, like tend the garden of your mind, make sure you're weeding it, feeding it, watering it, all the perspectives and implications of that metaphor. But I never really understood what it meant by be careful, or I never took the concept that I had to be planting the seeds I wanted to grow as well, which might seem obvious to many, but it wasn't to me. I thought I just got the thoughts that I thought, and I chose which the effort was to choose the ones I wanted to pay attention to and let the other ones go away. But I was always going to have them. I couldn't have any impact on what was being planted in my garden of growth. But it's not true. It's what I found. The more goodness and righteousness and virtue you practice in your life, the more you become understanding, and the more seeds of positive nature of with the more seeds with positive associations get planted, and the more right seeds of virtue and righteousness get planted, and then the selflessness and service continue to grow. So you do have a say in what you're putting into your garden to plant. You do have a say in that. It's a longer process than just as simple as picking a different bag of seeds. I get that, but you do get to weed it and tend it. Be intentional about what you're growing there, because you will always be sowing some sort of seeds. And that's what it's talking about. There is a process of seed sowing in the mind and life, a spiritual sowing which leads to a harvest. It always leads to a harvest, whatever you're putting out into that world. Thoughts, words, and acts are seeds to produce after their kind. The man who thinks hateful thoughts brings hatred upon himself. The man who thinks loving thoughts is loved. So you get to choose what you're bringing into your life. If you're thinking hateful thoughts, you're going to bring in hatred. If you think loving thoughts, you're going to bring in love. Joyous thoughts, joy. Like, embrace this principle, embrace this spiritual law, and you'll know much quicker, honestly, than you expect how powerful it is. And then all you'll want to do is tend that garden. It's just crucial. It really is. All right, now for the closing line. When you know yourself, you will perceive that every event in your life is weighed in the faultless balance of equity. Meaning everything in your life, then this physical existence that we have is the result of your thinking. Every interaction you have is purely based on your thinking and what you've put out there. You are right where you are because of what you think. You're doing exactly what you're doing because of what you think. You're walking the path that you're on because of what you think. Hatred brings upon himself hatred. Love brings upon love. Remember, it's just that simple at the end of the day. Difficult, always. Not difficult potentially, but simple. So, faultless balance of equity. Love that. So, all right. Well, there we go. Thank y'all for joining me again tonight. This was another great reading. It's going back to the beginning and starting with those foundational building blocks, which are just so important to actually growing a spiritual life. So, thank you all for joining me. It's always a great experience. I hope you all enjoyed it as well. And I look forward to tomorrow. So, until next time, thanks.